Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special live edition of Sports Talk, the Sunday night post-game show. I'm, of course, Ed, hoping to have my co-hosts join us in a few moments. What a game we just witnessed right now in Washington. Commanders beat the Falcons 30 to 24. With that win, Washington has clinched their first playoff berth in 4 years. Meanwhile, with this victory, also your Los Angeles Rams have won the NFC West and eliminating their rivals, the Seattle Seahawks. So congratulations to Coach Sean McVay and the LA Rams. You are the 2024 NFC West champions, which many of us was not sure it was going to happen. They had a 1-4 start. They're on a 5-game win streak. Again, for the second year in a row, they have a surgence in the second half of the season, winning 7 of the last 9 or 8 of the last 10, and now in the playoffs again under Sean McVay. So we're going to go ahead and give you the updated stats right now. We'll break down the playoff bracket. So as of right now, Minnesota is a 1 seed because they beat Green Bay. Right now, Philadelphia clinched the NFC East today. They're the 2 seed. Right now, the Rams are the 3 seed. Tampa Bay is the 4 seed because they won today. The Detroit Lions are the 5th seed, but they play tomorrow night against the 49ers, so that might swap. By the way, both teams will play next Sunday night on NBC to determine the 1 seed. Also, right now you're looking at the Commanders at 6 because they won, and the Green Bay Packers currently hold the 7th spot. So if the playoffs were to start today, the Rams will play the Commanders here at SoFi. And I'm proud to welcome Sean the Man Quinn, who's also a diehard Ram, who's got to be happy. And let me ask you, Sean, how you feel right now, man?
I am feeling pretty happy, I'll be honest. I'm feeling good. It's this is gonna be one of those years where I can be a happy football fan because the Rams, we have watched this team go from 1-4 at the bye week to now winning 8 of their last 10 or 9 of their last 11, excuse me. 9 of their last 11, and the Rams are now the NFC West champions.
Well, many doubters thought that it wasn't going to happen, and I believe my boy Jesus is joining us right now. We'll see if he's in. But I got to say, last night was a very, very interesting game at SoFi Stadium. Rams beat the Cardinals 13-9. Again, with that win and today's victories, we have the Rams in as the NFC champions. And right now, that locker room's got to be celebrating. I'm sure Sean McVay knows about it, but I want to kind of turn the gears and go back to last night against the Cardinals. Do you think the defense won that game for them, or is there still a lot of things that the Rams have to do to work before the playoffs start?
I think this Rams defense has completely made a turnaround. You wouldn't see the Rams where they're at right now if that defense had not made that turnaround in it. And Rams fans were all alike thinking, oh my God, this season is just going to be terrible. Starting 1-4, the only win coming somehow by beating the division rival 49ers, and seeing the core of our offensive line with Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, and Puka Nacua, all 3 of them out at the early start of the season. Tyler Higbee, of course, going back to when he had a late hit in the wild card game last season against Detroit, and he just came back this past week against New York. And at the start of the season, you lose Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp for an extended period of time. But once the Rams got them back, even without them, even at a 1-4 start going into the bye week, the Rams knew that something had to change. Offensively, defensively, something had to change. What it was that happened, I don't know. That's probably a question for Sean McVay or all of the coaches. Like, what in the world did you all do in the course of that bye week from week 5 to week 7? What changed?
Yeah, you're right though. There a lot of things had to be made, but if you go back to those losses, despite the Arizona blowout loss, that was a bad loss. That was the only bad loss out of that 5 game stretch. You look at teams against Chicago, against Green Bay, and then you go back to opening day against Detroit. Those were games that they could have won. They just didn't have the production enough to go over that lump. You go back, that they would have had more wins by then. But one thing that I've been explaining this, and I believe I talked about this on Friday's show, or actually on the Christmas Eve show. This is not the same team that won the championship a couple years ago. This is not the same explosive offense. I mean, yes, Cooper Cup's still there, but he's the only one there from that Super Bowl team. The lineman, the offensive line is completely different. The running game's different. Stafford is not throwing 300 yards like he did when he first came here. This is a new offense that Sean McVay had to design because pretty much everyone knows his system. We saw it in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. They shut down Jared Goff's system. And then you go back to against the 49ers the last few years, they've had the Rams number. So very, very lot of changes happened this season. But, you go back to the Buffalo game, that was the Super Bowl of old right there, putting up them 40 points.
That's that Buffalo game. When you have a tight game and you beat one of the better teams in the league 44-42 and put up what now will probably end up standing as the highest scoring game of the regular season this year. Well, actually, point wise, it's not the highest scoring game for a single team. I believe that belongs to the Cardinals when they when they well, actually, looking back at this, see, I thought the Cardinals put up 50 points against the Rams in that Week 2 game, but it was only 41.
It was 41. It was 41-20, 41-20 the final score was.
Yeah, and then you have, it's been crazy. Seeing these scores and just the difference, those 4 losses in the first 5 weeks, and then all green from there with 2 losses to the Dolphins and the Eagles. Those 2 games I had the displeasure of being at. The Philly game, you had to know that was going to happen, that the Eagles were going to come out on top on that one, but you never, any given Sunday, anything can and will happen. But that Miami game, the Rams should have won that Miami game, but I don't know what happened there. There was the string. I mean, having one of the lower teams in the NFL hold you to 5 field goals and no touchdowns. Yeah, I don't know. But there was that stretch of time where mid-season the Rams are winning one, losing one, winning one, losing one, going back and forth at 500, and then you get to week 13 and it's just been a hot streak from there. 5 games five in a row, stretching back to week 13 against the Saints. And then you have that amazing game against Buffalo at home, which I wish I could have been at. Hell, I wish I could have been at the Arizona game, knowing what
Yeah, I think the Buffalo game.
what was at stake.
That Buffalo game was the game that saved the season because if you look at it, had they lost that game, this would be a whole different conversation. The NFC West would have came down to the Seattle game next Sunday. So I think the Buffalo game, I'm
Oh,
looking at
absolutely.
the Buffalo game was the game that really, really set this up. And for those of you that were not able to watch the game last night, you guys should have been able to watch it. It was on CBS. But for those of you that missed it, here's the play that sealed the victory for the Rams.
Murray's going to throw it to the end zone. Up in the air. And intercepted. Witherspoon.
Witherspoon, his first interception of the season, a very perfect time to have that happen. And I gotta feel bad for Arizona, especially for 85, because it looked like that one, Sean. It went off the face of his helmet and it went up in the air, and it was all
It
bets
was a
off after
tip.
that.
It was tipped into the air off the guy's helmet. He was asking for a flag, but there was no penalty there at all. Yes, there was contact, but then after that, it was null and void. The ball hits him in the helmet and goes up in the air, and Okello Witherspoon runs up, makes that diving pick in the end zone, and seals the deal for the Rams, which honestly, it shouldn't have come down to even being that close. The Rams picked the ball from Arizona twice in the final 5 minutes of that game. You have Cam Kinchins picking the ball with 3.5 left. But then the Rams, instead of figuring out how to get far enough down the field and run down the clock and just end the game there, they somehow are able to give Arizona the ball back and allow them to get to a first and goal situation and almost be able to win the game. So little
Yeah,
dicey at the end. A little dicey at the end there.
yeah, I want to talk about that play, Sean. So I'm gonna roll this clip. This was the play that got the Rams to go 3-and-out after the first interception.
Stafford is going to throw it. He's going to throw it for Nakua. It cannot connect.
Here's my question. Why would you do that on 3rd down and 3 yards when you know you have a good running back in Kyrie Williams, or maybe you have the option to maybe do a quick slant to someone else? I just don't understand why you had to throw it on 3rd down. They just should have run it to me. In my opinion, they should have run it. The clock would have gone down to the 2-minute warning. They would have to punt the ball. I mean, take an extra couple seconds off the clock. I'm just saying, but I think that was to tell you the truth, I think that was a bad call. I don't know. What would you call that 3rd down and 2?
3rd and 2 in a game-winning situation, you can't really. I mean, knowing that you have, knowing that you do have Kyron Williams at the back, and also, what's the other kid's name?
Talk about Tutu Atwell?
No, not Tutu. The other, Blake Corum. You have Corum. You have Kyron Williams. The two of them, they have produced yardage. Kyron Williams, in his first 2 seasons, has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in his first 2 years. On 3rd and 2, yeah, I don't know why Sean McVay would go for a play call that puts the ball in the air on a 3rd and 2 when you have Kyron Williams that can easily run 2 yards on I don't know, maybe a slant route or something, or an RPO that can get the Rams the first down and end the game right there. But instead, either Sean McVay made that call or he heard it from his coaches, like, oh, we're going to pass it on 3rd and 2. In the situation that the Rams were in, knowing the severity of winning the game against Arizona, when you need to be able to win the game, why you're doing that, I don't know. I really don't.
Well, here's the thing. Let's go back to week 1, Sean. This is the same thing. Sean McVay's had a history of this. This happened in week 1 against Detroit in the fourth quarter. They were up by, I think they were up by 3. They were trying to put the game away. It looks like the same pass to Cooper Kupp, but it was overthrown or he wasn't able to complete the catch. Same scenario there. They had the punt and Jared Goff took them down the field. They tied the game and, we went to overtime and we know what happened here. Now we go months later. It looks like the same thing here. Do you think there's and I know we got some questions coming in on the chat, and I'll get to those. We'll get to those in a few minutes. I just want to get to this conversation real quick. Do you think there's a problem with being over aggressive, or do you feel that he's confident enough to pull this stunt, knowing I got the best receiving duo in the league? Let's go for it. Do you see that as maybe being over aggressive? That's being okay, or if are there issues when it comes to play calling?
Well, I trust Matthew Stafford. Yes, he's been in the league now for 12 years.
I believe he came in 2009, so about 15 years. He's a 15-year veteran.
Yeah, I trust the guy. He didn't get much success in Detroit because he didn't really have a team that could back him in Detroit, much like the Rams have now ever since that trade 3 years ago, or 4 years, almost 5 years ago now, actually. Then Stafford comes to LA, and in his second year with the team, first year, because the Jared Goff trade came before the 2021 season, right? The first year the Rams were in SoFi, it was still Jared Goff, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2020 was the COVID season. That was where there were no fans allowed. He was still the quarterback. Brandon Staley was defensive coordinator at the time. They actually had the number 1 defense that time. They actually made the playoffs, but they lost in Green Bay. So in the offseason, they decided to do an upgrade. And because the Super Bowl was going to be at SoFi, they went all in. They brought in Stafford, and then mid-season they made the moves to get OBJ and Von Miller because Robert Woods got hurt. So Stafford's been here. He's been here. This is his 5th year here, and he's done well in the month of December since he's been here. So, I mean, I wouldn't say he's Mr. Consistency because he's got a good record in the month that counts the most.
He's now, I think the record is now
15-1, I believe.
15-1 or 13-3.
He's only lost once in December, and that was the Baltimore game last season. But since he's been here, he's basically almost undefeated in this month alone. So that's pretty good for a guy who's about 36 years old.
It's the month where it counts. You're right. December's where it counts, and ever since Matthew Stafford became a Los Angeles Ram, he knows, minus 2022 when the injury bug was on everybody that year, and you have a very bad year where you go 5-12.
Yeah, they went 12-5 the Super Bowl year. Then they come back the next year. They have a reverse, so they go 5-12. But the year after that, they go 10-7.
10-7.
And right now they're 10-6, so they have a chance to go either 11-6 or another 10-7 season. But this team's only missed the playoffs twice. That was back in 2019 and then also the 2022 season. So a lot of success with Sean McVay, and he's also the winningest coach in his franchise. But I want to.
He is. He passed Jeff Fisher earlier this year.
Now I want to switch topics real quick. I want to talk about the defense. So we know it's been a hectic year on defense, but there's 2 guys that caught our attention, Verse and Fiske. So my question,
Jared Verse and Braden Fisk.
Yeah. So here, who do you pick to be the defensive rookie of the year? Because it's got to be one of those two. Those 2 got to win it. I mean, I'm just seeing it that way.
Both of those guys are incredible players. They both know how to put pressure on the opponent's offensive line, and both those guys have their numbers of sacks this year. I think, let me see if I can pull it up here.
I'll say this real quick. Aaron Donald, like those two sacks, combine those two sacks, I think Aaron Donald would probably double it if he was still playing.
Well, yeah, Aaron Donald would definitely. He's definitely looking at these young Rams defensive core, and like, okay, they know how to work without me. Just because I'm not playing in the NFL anymore doesn't mean that teams should be lackluster and not worry about the Rams defense without me. You look at Braden Fisk, and by himself, he has 8 sacks, and 20 tackles, and then let's see, where's Mr. Verse? Where is Mr. Jared Verse? There he is. Jared Verse, he's got 4.5 sacks and 35 tackles. So when it comes to Rookie of the Year, do they look at how many times he's made a stop, or will they look at the sack rate?
I think they go based on sack rates, pretty much all the stats.
If they go at the sack rate, then Braden Fisk would have it. Now, mind you, both of these guys, Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, they are both they're used to playing with each other on the same defense. Both of these guys came from Florida State. They both come from Florida State. Jared Verse, first round pick, 19th pick in the first round this year. And Braden Fisk was, where's he at? There he is. Braden Fisk, he came a little later. He was the 39th overall in the second round. So, but they both came out of Florida State, so they both know how to play with each other. Teammate-wise, let me clarify that. Being on the same team, they know how to play with each other on defense. They're used to it. So,
how about I throw 2 more names on there? We got to give these guys props. So how about Kobe Turner and then Byron Young? I mean, you got to give props to those guys as well.
The conductor, Kobe Turner. That man, can you say that Kobe Turner is the next Aaron Donald? Maybe. Because that man knows how to move. And he's also very musically talented. They don't call him his nickname's not the conductor for no reason. You watch him on TV, and every time the man gets a sack, he gets up and he's conducting the crowd. So, and then Byron Young, Kobe Turner, 8 sacks, 35 tackles. Byron Young, we'll pull him up real quick. Byron Young right now sits at 7 sacks and 33 tackles. So it's definitely those are definitely your top 4 in terms of top defense. Those are your top 4. Turner, Young, Verse, and Fisk. Rookie of the Year defensively, they'd probably be looking at Braden Fisk. He might be a name that gets thrown out there. If any of them, it would probably be him based on, like we said, probably the sack ratio, where Braden Fisk has 8 sacks on the season. So he knows how to get through the line and get to the quarterback.
Yeah, I think that defense core is going to be good, but I just think that if they add maybe a veteran or two veteran, this defense will probably be top notch going into next year. But the next question I
Well,
want to ask, go ahead.
look at what happened. Look at what happened 3 years ago when the Rams won the Super Bowl. You still had Aaron Donald, but then you also bring in Von Miller. And
And don't
Von Miller
forget
and
they
Aaron,
also had Jalen Ramsey as well.
that's true. You had Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey. Those were your top 3 years ago when the Rams won the Super Bowl.
They signed Bobby Wagner in the offseason after the Super Bowl. I think they should have signed him before that. You know, that would have been more of a lethal defense if they had 54 right there. But you bring him in a season later, and it just doesn't. The whole thing just falls apart.
And he only ends up with the team for 2 years, and now he's with the Commanders.
Actually, you know what? He only lasted a year because after that year, he decided to go back to Seattle. He had a meeting
that's right.
with Coach McVay in the off season, and they decided to part ways. So he went back to Seattle. Seattle
That's
dumped
right.
him. I think he went to Tennessee. Then he went to Washington, where he's at right now. Now he's going to the playoffs, and his old team, the Seattle Seahawks, unfortunately, are staying home this year.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner, B-Wags. He's a vet. He's been in the league now for 12 years. Like you said, picked up by Seattle, and then the Rams grab him after the Super Bowl. 2022 was not the year for the Rams, and Bobby Wagner said, "You know what? I want to be on a team that can win." So he goes back to Seattle. Seattle lets him go after 1 year, and now he's back in the playoffs with Washington. So, and we can actually, I always like to poke fun at this. My sister is an Eagles fan, right? So, and it was Zach Ertz for the Commanders in what probably could be his final season this year. Early in his career, Zach Ertz was with the Eagles. So, when Zach Ertz scored the game-winning touchdown for the Commanders tonight, I text my sister. I'm like, I can thank your former Eagle Zach Ertz for sending the Rams to the playoffs as NFC West champions. So, even though he was only with Philly for a limited time, he was still a Philly player. So I can poke fun at that with my sister. But my sister, she loves good old Philly rivalries, and even with the Rams Philly game, I was going back and forth with her during that game too, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you take this one. And who knows? It could end up being the Rams and the Eagles in the playoffs this year, maybe even for the NFC Championship. You never know.
Yeah, I think the only way the Rams will play the Eagles is if they meet in the NFC Championship game because if it finishes the way it is now, they're going to be higher seeds, so they won't be able to play. The Eagles will play the lowest seed, and then the Rams will play the second lowest seed, depending how the one
Right.
seed does. So we probably won't see the
Well,
Eagles.
right now, it all depends on where Detroit ends up tomorrow. If somehow San Francisco beats Detroit tomorrow night, then Minnesota takes the 1 seed, and Detroit will fall back to the 2nd seed, I believe.
No, actually, what's going to happen is if Minnesota beats Detroit, or actually if Detroit loses tomorrow, they'll go to the 5 seed. If they win, they'll go back to the 1 seed because
Right.
Detroit will lose the head-to-head because they beat them once already. Here's a funny thing too. If the Falcons won tonight, the Rams would have to cheer for the Niners to beat Detroit tomorrow night because that would have been one of the 4 victory teams that the Rams needed. Because going into today, they needed victories from the Bills.
You needed Buffalo, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Washington, and San Francisco.
Yeah, so we know that Cincinnati won last night. We know that the Bills beat the Jets. We knew that one was going to happen, and then we were all
That
hoping.
was going to be an easy one.
Yeah, and then we all knew.
That was a gimme.
Yeah, that was the gimme one. The Denver one, that one was hard to get because that could have gone either way. And then you look at the Minnesota game,
He
that was
doink
the best game.
he,
Yeah, the doink.
he
I was like, oh
the
my
doink
god.
the doink off the upright and
Yeah, we
Joe
seen a
Burrow
lot of.
goes.
Believe it or not, I think we seen more. Yeah, I
did you
saw
hear
that.
the hot mic?
Yeah,
Did you
Kevin
get the
Harlan like,
hot mic?
oh, off the upright.
Well, not that, but Joe Burrow, because it was Cincinnati that had doinked it late in the game, and Joe Burrow gets caught on the hot mic, and he's like, "One effing job, damn." That they're saying that was Joe Burrow, but that could have also just been a random ass fan in the stands, you know. So it could have been a random fan up there in the stands. But people were saying it was Joe Burrow that screamed that out. He's like, "You had one effing job." Like, okay.
You know, it's funny because I was reviewing the clips before we went on the air, and I just wanted to play this again because I just had so much fun with this last night.
33-yarder to win it.
The kicker's face, the expression was just like, what the hell just happened? And I just couldn't stop laughing because I was talking to someone on the phone and then that happened. I was just like, oh my God, he missed a kick. Imagine if Denver would have won. I mean, if Denver would have won, because then Miami would have won. I mean, I don't know if the Rams would have been able to win it had Denver won last night. I mean, I just don't know. But it played out the way it did. It doesn't matter at this point. The Rams are in. And the Seahawks are out for this year. Again, the Seahawks are going to miss another playoff match.
Are the Seahawks officially out? Are they out now?
Yes, because they are at 8 wins. They can only finish at 9 and actually no, they are at
9 and 7.
Yes, but because of the strength of schedule, it goes to the Rams. So it doesn't matter if Seattle wins because the Rams won and the other teams won. They can't go to the head-to-head. Also, the Rams have a better record in the NFC West than Seattle. So every tiebreaker would go to the Rams. The Rams will hold the edge over Seattle regardless.
Right.
And also, the wildcard teams have 11 wins. So the best they can finish is at 10 and 7. So it wouldn't matter. Their only hope was that the Rams will lose last night and then will win next Sunday.
It would have come down to week 18 to see who wins the NFC West. And the NFC West has been this has been the year the NFC West has not been strong.
No, usually it was a weak division all year.
Usually you see the NFC West and it's dominated by who else? The San Francisco 49ers. This year, the Niners just, it's one of those things. It almost hits every team except for the Chiefs, where they have good seasons, and then the season after they do good, you lose a lot of your key guys. Look at the Niners. They haven't had Christian McCaffrey for all but 2 weeks. They had him for 2 weeks. He was out at the start of the season with the knee injury. He comes in and he plays for a couple weeks, and then in the Snow Bowl against Buffalo on Thursday night, he tears his MCL and is out for the season. And then they also were going without Brock Purdy for a couple weeks, and Deebo Samuel. The top names for the Niners just weren't there this year.
It just wasn't their year, and I knew going into the season they were going to have a difficult task because they still didn't get over that Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs. By the way, went to overtime. Also, let me clarify one thing. The Snowball you mentioned, that was actually a Sunday night game that
Oh,
was
was
in
it
Buffalo.
Sunday?
It was a Sunday night game. But yeah, they got him back for a while and they were doing well, but then they lost him. Then he goes down. And then here's the interesting thing. What's going to happen in this? I think this team might break up this season because there's going to be a lot of money owed. Brock Purdy's owed money. Deebo Samuel's owed money. Don't know what the status of Christian McCaffrey is. He may never be the same after this injury. We've seen running backs who tear their ACLs or their MCLs,
Of
PCLs.
course.
They're never the same after that. So he might be expendable. He might be liable. They might just cut him loose now because no, it's not fun having a running back who tore those key muscles that makes him a very efficient running back. And he was. And it's a shame because he's a great running back. He came to San Francisco
Exactly.
and lifted him up. They lift up the running game. Now with him
Cooper
like this, yeah,
Cooper
that's
Cup
another.
was the exact same thing with the Rams 2 years ago when they lost Cooper Cup after winning the Super Bowl. Cooper Cup
Yeah,
goes and tears his ACL. He's
and
out
that's
for
not
the
the first
season in
time.
2022.
Yeah, that's not the first time they lose Cooper Cup. You go back to the 2018 season where they went to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. They lost Cooper Cup for the season. The other guys had to step up, and then you go back to 2022. They lose him for the season again, and then the following year he missed a couple games, came back. So I mean, and that leads to my question. You know,
It's
is it
it's now it's now
is
the
he still?
second year in a row. This is now the second year in a row that the Rams have come back from being under 500 to heading into the playoffs. This year, it's a little different because this year they are representing the NFC West. As the sole survivor of the NFC West, the Rams will represent as division champions. Last year, they managed to get in as the wild card from the NFC West, and San Francisco won the West last year. But this year, it's all on the Rams to keep the West alive, at least on the NFC side. But last year, the Rams finished 10-7 last year and got to that. I think it was 10-7, right? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah,
5,
they
6.
were. They finished 10-7.
Yeah, it was 10-7 last year. And the Rams they get into the playoffs by the string of their pants last year, and then they lose in the first round in the wild card to the Lions. So it's like they lose to the Lions in the first round last year. Then they come back and they open the season this year in Detroit, and they lose that one in overtime as well.
Yeah,
So
I think
you
that
ha-
was a
you ha- you
botching.
have you have two good games between the Rams and Detroit within the past 2 years to end the season for the Rams last year and start the season this year. A lot of Rams fans are very controversial at the fact that they think the Rams might have been screwed over a little bit by the officials in that wild card game on calls that should have been made that weren't. And um, and then you have the game to start the year this year, So the Rams have a chance to if they don't beat Seattle next week, they go back-to-back seasons at 10-7. The only difference being that this year they are the NFC West champions.
Yeah, and the key factor too here is that they do have to play next week because they want to finish higher to play a weaker team. Because we're gonna look at this again. If let's say Detroit doesn't win tomorrow, and let's say that Minnesota somehow beats them next Sunday night, they gotta play Detroit again, but this time it'll be at home. So the Rams will have the home field advantage. But they'll play Minnesota if it switches. And keep in mind, the Rams have already beaten Minnesota here once this year on Thursday night. Then you look at other teams as maybe Green Bay could jump up there. They played them close this year and they could have won that game. The only team the Rams haven't played so far this year from the playoffs, they haven't played Tampa. They haven't played Washington. So those are two teams that the Rams haven't played that may match up well against. They could match up well against Washington, because both offenses are almost the same. The problem is the quarterback is so damn good. He's like he's a Kyle Murray of the NFC East. The good news is they don't have to play the Eagles unless it's the NFC Championship game. They don't have to play the 1 seed unless it's the NFC Championship game. So, vice versa, this might be an easy run than last year where they had to go on the road. So, who out of these teams, who do the Rams match well again? My guess, Minnesota, because they've already seen them once and they've already beaten them once.
Yeah, right now, as it sits, there is still technically one spot open on both sides in the AFC and NFC. There's the number, what is it? 1, 2, 3. The number 4 seed is still available in the NFC, and the 7 seed is still available in the AFC. On the NFC side of things, that number 4 seed right now sits and belongs to Tampa Bay. And they have an 81% probability of making it as the number 4 seed at the end of week 18.
Well, yeah, I mean, they got an easy route because all they got to do now is win and you're in. The problem is if Tampa loses and they tie with Atlanta wins the South because they own the head-to-head over Tampa. So, I mean, Tampa has one thing to do. They just have to win. But if they lose, they're going to open up the door to Atlanta. So that's going to be interesting. Tampa plays New Orleans next week. That should be a winnable game.
Yeah, it should be. So Tampa should be able to finish 10-7. And the Rams, I mean, I'm hoping 11-6 because if you're 11-6, you stay in the 3 seed, and you have a chance to play the lower team. But if you go 10-7, then you play a higher seeded team, and you never know. As it sits right now, if there was no Week 18, if we go back 3 years to before the NFL added, or when was it? When did Roger Goodell?
It was in the 2021 season when all the changes went into effect.
Yeah, so if you flash back 4 years to before there was week 17 and 18, and it was just 16 games instead of 17. If the season ended today, if today was the last game of the season, right now the Rams would be playing the Commanders at home in the wild card game. Because even though you're the top team in the division and you may win the division, the only way you get the first round bye is by being the number 1 seed. So all the other teams still have to fight from the bottom through the wild card and up. So the Rams, as it sits right now, it's the 3 and the 6, and it's the Rams hosting the Commanders. That could change come next week. But I think if the Rams want a chance this year, you could. I mean, both possibilities are Washington and Green Bay. And, it's tough to say. Like, you're saying you think it's going to be Rams, Green Bay. But I think if things hold out, it may be Rams Commanders, and you may see Jaden Daniels bring his rookie campaign to SoFi in the wild card.
Yeah, keep in mind that this will be the first game at SoFi since the Super Bowl. This will be the first playoff game for the Rams since that Super Bowl run. But it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting how next week plays out. And Sean McVay has a lot of decisions he's got to think about this week in practice. Does he put Jimmy Garoppolo in? Does he rest his starters? Is he going to be okay dropping to possibly the 4th seed if Tampa Bay wins? Because it looks like Tampa Bay might finish better than the Rams. And again, we already know that the 1 seed and the 5 seed is going to come out of the NFC North. You just don't know what dangerous team will be. And also, just to let our viewers know,
It,
the
it
Rams.
it's either going to be you're either going to have Minnesota or Detroit.
Yeah, I
And
mean, like, if you're Sean McVay, like, do you want that now, or do you want that later?
I mean, if the Lions win tomorrow, they take the number one, and then it comes down to Week 18.
And
But
by the way,
even then, if Detroit wins tomorrow, like you said, they already have the strength of season over Minnesota. So if the Lions beat San Francisco tomorrow, then Detroit will officially take that number one seed away from Minnesota, I believe. Or it could be the Week 18 battle, because I mean both teams would be 14-2, but I think even if Minnesota finishes 15-2 and say Detroit goes 14-3, would Detroit still sit at number 5?
whoever, yeah, I think the thing is, here's the scenario. This was just handed to us by our producer Jesus, and I want to give him a shout out to him. He was not able to be on the show tonight, but he is working behind the scenes. Just want to give a shout out to my
Thank you,
boy there.
Jesus. Thank you.
So yeah, so he just gave me this note right now. So the Rams will be the 3 seed, and they'll host the 6 seed, which is either the Commanders or the Packers. Now, for that to
Right.
happen, they have to win or tie with Seattle. But if they lose to Seattle, if Tampa Bay loses against the Saints and Atlanta wins the NFC South, then the Rams will finish at the 3 seed. So 4 things will happen. They can win and keep the 3 seed. They could lose and keep the 3 seed only if Tampa loses, or they'll lose and drop to the 4 if Tampa wins. So,
Right. So
and again, this is going to be on Coach McVay. He's got a lot of decisions to make this week, because this is not one thing. This is the playoffs here. You're basically gonna set in motion who you're gonna play on the wild card weekend.
right. The season essentially is on the line, not in the playoffs, but the season's on the line in Week 18, because you have to make
Not just in week 18. It's on the line starting tomorrow night with the game in San Francisco, because I'm going to be watching that, and that's going to be interesting to see. Plus, throughout practice this week, and I'm pretty sure Coach McVay is going to get asked this, if he's going to risk starters. So it's going to be interesting to see what his response will be. Now, he's not made a statement yet about what's happened, and I know the Rams are aware of what happened. But just a reminder, for Week 18, there's going to be 2 games.
I don't think we're going to hear anything from Coach McVay until later this week. But
Probably
I mean,
tomorrow.
he did say in his post-game press conference last night, some reporter asked him the stupid question of, will he be watching the scoreboards today? And Coach McVay's like, no, I'll just be lounging at home. Then he just switches it automatically, and he goes, yes, what the hell kind of question was that? Yes, I'll be watching the scoreboards. So it could just be a repeat of last year. Even if the Rams go 10-7, it could be a repeat of last year, where in the last game against San Francisco, because both the Rams and Niners did not have to worry about getting into the playoffs because they were already locked in, do the Rams bench the starters? Like, do you see Jimmy Garoppolo and Stetson Bennett out there with Matthew Stafford on the headset coaching them to get through the game? You saw last year, we still had Stetson Bennett as QB3, but he was basically inactive the whole year. So that last game was on the shoulders of Carson Wentz, the former Eagle turned Commander turned Kansas City Chief. So
yeah, and that's what I want to know. What is he trying to win, another ring or what?
I don't know. Carson Wentz, you got to give the guy props because when the Eagles first got to the Super Bowl, when the Eagles played the Rams in the playoffs that year, or not even before it was during the season, and he goes down with a leg injury. The Rams had a dirty hit on him, and he messes up his leg, and he's out for the year. Then you look at Philadelphia had to rely on Nick Foles to get them through the rest of the year, and he did. And Nick Foles got them to the Super Bowl. Nick Foles pulls off the Philly special in the second quarter. Nick Foles wins them the Super Bowl, and Philly fans were ecstatic. They loved it. So, yes, Carson Wentz does technically have a Super Bowl ring from being on that Philadelphia team, but, I mean, maybe the Chiefs have a chance to do something this year that has not been done ever before, and that's be the first team in NFL history to go back to back to back and have a three-peat in the Super Bowl. Hasn't been done before. There have been teams, I believe it, the Steelers, when Terry Bradshaw was still the quarterback, the Steelers went to 4 consecutive Super Bowls and won 3 out of those 4, but the third one was the fourth of those 4 games, and that third game was split, and it was the other team that beat them. So the Steelers had a chance to go 3 in a row, but they coughed it up in that third game. The Chiefs have a chance, a very high chance, to go 3 in a row this year. Now, let's talk theoretics here. Let's say it's the Chiefs and the Rams in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. Do the Rams come from behind and play upset to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs dynasty? Could the Rams finally sit Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs down and really show them that they're not always going to be the middle child, favorite child of the NFL? Or that Patrick Mahomes may be the favorite child of the referees?
You know, I've had conversations with other fans, and they gave another nickname for Patrick Mahomes. They like to refer him as the Muffet Kermit the Frog, and I was just like, wow.
Well, I don't know if you watched the Christmas Day games, but Noah, was it? No, it was Ian Eagle that poked fun at the fact that people call Patrick Mahomes Kermit the Frog because of his voice. And even Patrick himself kind of poked fun at it too at the end of the game in his interview. I mean, sometimes they can have fun, but you also got to be serious at the same time. You know,
I'm not sure if that's the right. I don't know. So I'm not sure if this is the right time to be like instigating that, starting War of the Words with him, because you go back to the off season before the season, like the Raiders were kind of like referring him to like a Muffet, and he actually turned around and I believe they swept the Raiders this year.
Did they?
Looks like they did. Yeah, they did. They only had one loss, and that was to Buffalo.
Yeah, it was the Bills that played spoiler to the Chiefs possibly having the first undefeated season since the Dolphins. And the Chiefs would have had that 17-0 record, and the Dolphins only went 16-0 the year that they were undefeated. But if it ends up coming down to that, then you have the Chiefs finishing 16-1 as the best team in the NFL, because every other team in the NFL has at least 2 or more losses. and Kansas City sits on top with only 1, that being to Buffalo. So, I don't know. It can't just be looking at it on the NFC side. I mean, you look at the AFC side, and you have there's a good lineup on the AFC side of things. You've got the Chiefs, of course. There's 3 names that are kind of household names at this point: Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Those are your 3 first-place teams. Actually, 4. Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Houston. Those are your 4 first-place teams. Houston is kind of the come-from-behind at 9-7, and because of the way the AFC South is this year, Houston finds themselves on top with C.J. Stroud. Then you have Pittsburgh, Los Angeles Chargers, and the Broncos. The Broncos do have a chance to stay in the 7 seed at 9-7, but there's also the Dolphins. And we go back to what I was talking about earlier, how the Rams lost to the Dolphins at the point where the Dolphins were, when it came to that game.
Yeah, let's bring this up. That team once upon a time was dead. Now all of a sudden they're trying to make a late surge. And yeah, let's talk about the AFC real quick. You know, right now the Chargers are listed as the 6th seed.
They're the 6th seed.
Yeah, so if they finish there, and it looks like right now the 3 seed is the Baltimore Ravens. What I mean, you're gonna have to go to Baltimore and have to play the Ravens.
It's the Harbaughs once again.
Yeah, another Harbaugh ball. I don't know if fans want to see another one of that.
I mean, Jim and John love each other because they're brothers. You know, brotherly love. All up until it comes to being on the field. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that the two of them have played each other in playoff contention. They played each other in the Super Bowl when Jim was still the head coach of the 49ers. They played each other in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it looks like they played a total of 3 times, and so far 3 times was John Harbaugh victorious over his brother. So, I mean, you think would they say 3rd time's a charm?
Maybe baby brother Big Brother Jim can come through and spoil baby brother's hopes. Maybe this will be the year.
Well, one thing we know for sure, Denver.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be a Los Angeles Super Bowl. Maybe it'll be Chargers Rams. It's a possibility. It can happen.
You know, that would be a good thing, but too bad the Super Bowl's not in LA. So, I mean, that would have been a great story to write right there.
Well, 2027, Super Bowl 61, back in LA. Where will the Chargers be in 3 years? I don't know. We'll find out. If the Chargers somehow completely turn into a brand new team in 3 years, and Jim Harbaugh is still leading the way, and then the Rams in 3 years, I don't know if Matthew Stafford will still be there 3 years from now, but who knows? Maybe 2027, when the Super Bowl is back in LA, maybe it will be an all LA Super Bowl. Chargers Rams in their own stadium.
Here's the thing: Jim Harbaugh made history this season. You know, he of course we know that he led the Niners to the Super Bowl. Now in his first year, he took them to the NFC title game. He took the Chargers to the playoffs in his first season with the Chargers. And here's the thing: you know, when we talked in the off season, and Jesus can probably back me up on this, we talked about that we weren't sure where this team was going to go because of all the questionable free agency moves that they were doing, you know, losing Keenan Allen, losing Austin Eckler, their running back, but then they bring in young running backs and young players, and this team actually went on a streak, and they've been in contention ever since. So I mean, I guess I have to say that hey, I got proved wrong. Jim Harbaugh knows what he does when it comes to first years with any other organization. We see it in college and we've seen it in the pros with him as a coach.
Okay, here's something that I just want to sidebar real quick. I saw this earlier with the Giants beating the Colts earlier today.
Yeah, what was that all about?
The 2-13 New York Giants beating the 7-9 Indianapolis Colts. The Giants have now put their opportunity to draw the number 1 overall draft pick next year at risk.
I had a viewer stop me on the way to my house earlier, and he was like, the Giants screw themselves for winning, and I told the fan, well, that's true. They may have screwed themselves, but they also screw the Colts too because they knocked them out of the playoffs.
And let's see what else. Oh, on the thought of the this is NHL. God, I'm stupid. I thought this said NFL. Ugh, I'm dumb. Never mind. I don't even know why I brought this up because I thought that said NFL. Haha. Ugh. Well, I guess I'll just bring it up anyway. The 2025 NHL draft will be at the Peacock Theater in downtown Los Angeles. So,
and maybe they'll get some NFL players to join us there for sure.
2025 NHL draft, Peacock Theater in Los Angeles. After this year, it was at the Sphere in Vegas. So it's coming. The draft will be coming back to LA.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
For hockey.
Yeah, very, 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 very interesting. And we do want to give while we're on the subject, we do want to give a congratulations to our former Long Beach City College professor, Professor Phil.
Yes.
Who have completed a milestone, calling his 1,000th game with the Anaheim Ducks. So we want to extend a congratulations to our old professor because that is one milestone, and just want to give him a praise and a cheer because he deserved it.
Oh wow, outboard. What in the world?
Now we are just about.
I didn't know you had a soundboard.
Yeah, no, this is pretty cool. I just realized this. Now we're just about almost out of time here. Now we're just almost about out of time here on Sports Talk. But before we go, we do want to play a brief clip from Sean McVay after winning yesterday in the locker room. Let's see how hyped up he sounded. Here's a noise.
Hey, I gotta tell you guys this though. One of the things that we talked about on defense all year to make them snap it 1-4 out. Sometimes, man, what a strange game. What a great job just staying in fight. All right, offensively being able to get that field goal we had to knock off a little bit of clock. All right, we end up hitting the field goal by Cardi, but I got one game ball. All right, hey, first pick of the year, you picked a damn good time. Let's go. Hey, family, I'll do 1, 2, 3.
That was a very cheerful locker room last night, or after the Cardinals game.
Okello Witherspoon. I got nothing to say, so I'm just gonna break us.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to say nothing either.
Here's one thing that a lot of Rams fans can say. There is nothing like the atmosphere in SoFi for a Rams primetime game. That past Saturday night was the Rams' 6th, I believe, primetime game this season. 2 of them were on the road. The other 4 in LA at SoFi, where the Rams house came to life. You had a Thursday night game, a Sunday night game, a Monday night game, and a Saturday night game.
That's pretty impressive.
All 4 of those primetime games, the Rams house was alive. Now, granted, probably was the most alive this weekend, and this is probably the most, from what I was seeing, the SoFi was packed to the rafters last night, absolutely sold out, an official attendance of 73,054.
Yeah,
and SoFi was built to only hold about 70, so they were beyond capacity.
Yeah, and there was a lot of Rams. Nice to see a lot of Ram fans there for a change after seeing all the
It was. You look back, and since the Rams came back to LA in 2016, they have not really had a very large amount of fans show up to the game, even when they were still at the Coliseum. You would still see a lot of the visiting team fans at the games. Last night was probably the first time since the Rams have come back to LA that in the regular season where you have almost an entire stadium of Rams fans. It was a sea of royal blue and scattered cardinal red and white.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the old Ram and the old Cardinals play each other at SoFi. That's funny. Now, I know I showed the clip of the Rams, but I don't want to diss our other LA team because they did put a butt whooping yesterday in New England and they did win. So we're gonna play a brief clip of Jim Harbaugh's victory speech after
40-7.
Yeah, let's take a look at what he had to say.
Appreciate you. You players have done this. You players have done this. You coaches have done this. And, but most of you players have done this. And you men have led us. You have led us from the beginning, from day one. So, I just want to celebrate you guys. Love you guys. Great leadership. And, a nice, he's a jolly good fellow for these men. Yeah. You know what to do. For he's a jolly good fellow. For he's a jolly good fellow. For he's a jolly good fellow. When nobody cares.
I don't know how many times they signed that on the plane ride home yesterday.
Look, when you beat up the former dynasty of the NFL 40-7, that's a butt whooping. And then Philadelphia had to one up them by scoring 1 extra point and go 41-7 against Dallas today. But still, it's a butt whooping either way. And I mean, let's look back to the offseason. Jim Harbaugh wins the national championship with Michigan. And he says, after this year, I'm going to retire from Michigan and I'm going to go back to the NFL. I want to coach the big leagues again. And so many teams were looking at him. And then he ends up with the Chargers. I'll put it this way. There were a lot of doubts that Sean McVay might return as the Rams head coach this year. But then eventually the Rams said, no, he's here to stay. We love Sean McVay. He's here to stay. I can probably say this for sure, and a lot of Rams fans probably will agree, and yourself too, Edward. Had the Rams parted ways with Sean McVay and were looking for a head coach, I don't have a doubt that Jim Harbaugh would have ended up in LA and would be coaching this Rams team. Can you imagine where this team would be if we had a legendary head coach as Jim Harbaugh?
No doubt about it. I agree with you on that, partner. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's a big name, so if you're gonna replace the guy that won you a Super Bowl, you better damn well get someone that's pretty damn good. And they ended up getting, they would have got him. Hey, I think the Rams would have had a better record than the Chargers. They probably would have been at least
Probably.
maybe a 12-4 team right now. I'm sure they would have been able to deal with the injury bugs better than what they did this year. Now, no disrespect to Sean McVay, he's a great coach, but I think this would have been a replacement had he stepped away. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But again, we are gonna be here live throughout the week. We'll post updates with the Rams to see what's gonna happen as far as the starter situation will go. We're also gonna keep tabs on.
Here's a question for you, Edward. I guess we can probably put this out here. Depending on where we end up, I don't think we'd really be able to take the show on the road. But maybe the two of us could find our way. Oh, excuse me. Maybe the two of us could find our way into SoFi for one of these playoff games.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can't afford a seat, but I'm sure we can probably pay to get in, and he's in, set up studio somewhere.
Well, tailgating is always a thing. But you got to pay to get into the tailgate lot, but then you need
Put it this way,
you really never know.
We can discuss this at our next production meeting. I know we just got back on here last week, but I think we got a production
there you go
this week, so we'll see what we can do though. But I do appreciate you coming on board. I know it's been a while, and it's good to see everyone. So thank you, Sean, for joining us today. Hopefully, we'll have Jesus back here this week.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back and better than ever. But unfortunately, I do want to report some sad news before we log off for the night. Many of you have known about this, but just in case, we'll report it now. But former great broadcaster Greg Gumbel, who's been known for working for CBS Sports, NBC, ESPN, and other variety stations. He passed away this past Friday from cancer at the age of 78. The family made an announcement on Friday that he went peacefully surrounded with his loved ones. Greg Gumbel was a great sportscaster. I got to watch him everywhere from the NBA, the NFL, NASCAR, when he was
Madness.
at March Madness at Sports Center. It's a very sad, time for our business because we lost one of the great sportscasters, and I believe a lot of the NFL Network staff that called yesterday's games were mostly CBS people, and they did share a lot of memories about Greg Gumbel. I believe Kevin Harlan shared his time. Trent Green, who worked with Greg Gumbel. Jamie Ertl, who's the host of Good Morning Football, she got to work a couple years with Greg Gumbel. Even Rich Eisen mentioned this during the Rams game last night. And also during the Chargers game as well. And I believe in the NFL today they announced this as well. So it's a very, very sad, a sad time for our business, but we do want to extend our thoughts and prayers to the entire family. He was a great man, Sean, and he's going to be missed. And I have a lot of memories of him. He's the first African American sportscaster to call 2 Super Bowls. So that's a pretty great accomplishment. But again, Greg
50 years in the world of sports for Mr. Gumbel.
Yes, we also want to dedicate this in his memory as well, as he set the milestone for all of us that wants to get in this business. So from us, Greg Gumbel, we just want to thank you and give you congratulations on such a great career, 50 years, and you'll be missed. And our thoughts and prayers go out to your family, and especially your granddaughter. We know how much you meant to her, and hopefully she's able to get passes and to move on and, make you proud, which all of us hope for as well. But Sean, I just want to say I appreciate you coming aboard, man. Thank you, and we'll do this again this week, brother.
We shall.
For Sports Talk, for Sean Quinn, I'm Edward Rentasso. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.